What?
Should I put these on?
Can you guys hear us?
Yep.
Yep.
Is there going to be an open mic like that's on all the time or no?
See that one more time?
Is there going to be a microphone that's on at all times or no? Just a question, not a suggestion.
No, not from our end.
Okay.
Ricardo, are you in the vet center?
No, I'm in my house. This is my bunker.
I looked behind you, I seen the sign.
Yes. My remote office for almost a year and a half.
So the podium mic, though, is movable, right? I can pick that up, turn it on, and walk around. Or that, either one. Okay.
Hello, good evening. Mr. Vasselli, I'm going to do a sound check with you. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Sorry.
Thank you. Mr. Phytros, can you hear me?
Yes.
Thank you. Dr. Martinez,
Yes.
thank you.
And I can hear you guys as well, Chris Gibbons.
Thank you, Mr. Gibbons.
Thank you.
Yeah, Roberto, if you want to focus here a little bit, if you can. So tonight for the Board of Retreat, I will be playing the part of the acting superintendent and also the acting BA. So I'm going to read the Business Administrator Open Public Meetings Act to open the meeting. The New Jersey Open Public Meetings Law was enacted to ensure the right of the public to have advance notice of and to attend meetings of public bodies at which any business affecting their interests is discussed or acted upon. In accordance with the provisions of this act, the Ridgefield Park Board of Education has caused notice of this meeting to be published by having the date, time, and place thereof posted in the Bergen Record, Municipal Building, Board of Education offices, and district website. For public participation instructions, the public participation will be conducted both in person and virtually through Zoom. All public will be muted throughout the meeting. Public participation comments are limited to 5 minutes. The public will be able to both speak and be seen by the board when participating virtually, telephonically, via Zoom. Individuals participating virtually that wish to make comments during public participation will need to raise their hand by clicking the blue hand icon at the bottom of the Zoom window. Individuals participating by telephone that wish to make comments during public participation will need to hit *9 on their telephone to raise their hand. The technician will then unmute individuals one at a time to speak in order of the hand being raised. At this time, I'd like to take a roll call of attendance. Mr. Phytros?
Here.
Mr. Gibbons?
Here.
Mr. Gomes?
Here.
Mrs. McNeil?
Here.
Dr. Martinez?
Here.
Mrs. Orth?
Here.
Mrs.
Here.
Rodriguez?
Here.
Mr. Verselli?
Here.
Mr. Cathcart? President Fernandez? And Dr. Barry Haines, Acting Superintendent. We're ready to do the flag salute. I'd like to remind the public before public participation that this is a board retreat. There is no action being taken at tonight's meeting. And in a few minutes, I will introduce our guest, Mrs. Judy Wilson, who will lead us in the board retreat. At this time, we will open the floor for public comment. Reverend John Maxim. Oh, okay, that was the sign-in sheets. My apologies. Thank you for joining us, Reverend Maxim. He's present in our community is what he's saying to the public out there at large. Mrs. Schmidt.
Hello, Jenny Schmidt, 138 Fifth Street. I just have a couple of very quick comments about last Board of Ed retreat, just to clarify some things first, because I think several people, maybe parents and board members, didn't fully understand why some parents were bringing up 3R's curriculum and other points. So the reason we're bringing up the 3R's curriculum is, for one, our curriculum has yet to be presented to us for next year. So we have to look at some things that we can see, and we don't want to wait till the end of August. We're bringing it up because our current curriculum also already implements the 3R's curriculum. And we haven't seen any of our district's curriculum, and it would be foolish to speak up after it's all been written. And lastly, because you are paying Ms. Weisgerber with our tax money, and she's coming back to help our teachers write their lessons. So we're going to look at the lessons that she promotes. I think that makes logical sense. Just wanted to clear up why we are giving examples from those lesson plans. There's very good reason for that. Also, one more comment about the sex ed retreat prior. And really, it's a comment about, SEL, social justice, which also pertains to your district goals. I think we really need to be careful moving forward while we aim to be more inclusive of others and their feelings, their identities, their family structures, and so on, that we aren't making any group in particular feel ostracized or uncomfortable with their beliefs and values and identities. I could give some specific examples, but there's a lot of topics, whether it's sex ed or something else, but really sex ed has a lot of these topics that, people have faith, implications and morals and things that come into their belief system. And when these topics come up in school, Taz mentioned, we're only going to teach the facts, and everybody, parents can then teach values. Thanks. It's all right. I mean, I don't care if the rest of them hear me.
Simone, is the sound connection still good at home? Okay, so for the people at home, we just lost a connection, the visual connection to the online people attending. So if you'll just bear with us a minute while we get the visuals back up for the people in the room, much appreciated.
Gives me a minute. I forgot where I was. Somebody hacked.
We are able to hear you.
Should I could keep
Great,
going.
you're back up. Thank you. Thank you for your patience.
Okay, now I don't know where I
Mrs. Schmidt.
left off. But basically, I just think we need to be careful about saying we're going to teach only facts and then let, families then implement their values. And sex ed in particular, we're strictly, keeping to the facts. I'm skeptical about that. Based on what I've seen, based on 2018 lesson plans, I'm skeptical about how you can stick to the facts, but then show YouTube videos for very controversial topics and weigh both sides of things. Abortion in particular is one. I've also asked for more information about, what is YouTube videos? Give me the videos. I'd like to see them. Then I can make a better decision for my child, whether I want to opt them out of something or not. So to get that information is really important, and we still haven't gotten the answers from the last retreat at all. It's helpful to have those answers sooner than later, so parents can decide what they're doing here and what's happening. More on the focus of goals. Right now, one of your district goals, number 3, is college and career readiness. I think that should be goal number 1. I'm not sure if they're in a, prioritized in that way, but I think if there is an order of priority, that should be number one. And I don't understand why, SEL or social justice would even be a goal anymore. That's my opinion, because it's now integrated into all subjects and the whole curriculum mandated by the state. So I'm not sure why that needs to be a goal anymore. And then one more little note. I did ask a question, again, about the sex ed presentation, about a study and looking for the name of that study. I'm going to make it easy on you. That study doesn't exist about pedophilia and how they avoid minors if they know the proper terms for their genitals. There is no study. So when you see a slide that says studies say this, and that's why kids should know the names of their genitals, it's false, flat out false. So it's not really a good justification. That's all I have for tonight. Thanks.
So, Mrs. Schmidt, let me respond to some of the things you said. As we stated last meeting, we know that there are many issues here that we as a learning community need to discuss and be transparent about. I've chosen August 17th as the meeting evening that we will have a committee review. I am still working with the board and need to work with the board to ask about board representation and how we present that. But in my mind, that will be a committee presentation of the curriculum, which will be completed tomorrow. So the curriculum will be posted online. And if things work out, we expect to present that on the 17th. What I expect to happen at that meeting, and again, I need more input from the board. So bear with me as we work together to make sure that we're presenting that on the 17th. I expect that to be a review of the curriculum that will be posted online, give you an opportunity to talk about it, talk through about the contentious lessons and the opt-out process that you'll go through. But that is a draft goal at this point. That's when it would be. Okay.
So I just want to clarify. So the district is going to post the curriculum online tomorrow for the public to see.
I do want more board input before I commit to that, especially Mrs. Rodriguez from the committee that you chair. So I don't want to get ahead of this until we have a little more discussion. But
Oh, no, 'cause I thought that's what I just heard, that tomorrow,
tomorrow the curriculum will be completed.
oh,
Yes.
will be completed,
Completed,
but it's not
yes.
going to be posted tomorrow.
I want more board engagement in that
Okay.
before we do that. Yes. Luan Reber? Yeah.
Hello, my name is Luani River. I live in 133 Hudson Avenue in Ridgefield Park. So my concern beyond the curriculum, many parents and counties and districts across the state have been able to say, no, we're not going to implement these standards. They push back about the standards. About 15 counties and places in New Jersey have been able to say no. So I want the board to please consider that it is possible to say no to this implementation. Okay, so let me read my concerns. The new sex ed standards, this is state-based, are found to be inappropriate by many families and parents across the state. Before I continue, I did speak to the mom here that has a fifth grader. I will mention some information, but this information pertains third, fourth, and fifth grade only. So just so you know, I checked with her, I let her know, please, but she says okay. So many parents around the state find this information inappropriate. The excuse for these standards is that we must give equality to the needs of the LGBTQ community. Unfortunately, as I look through the standards in the curriculum, I only see celebration of genders that are not heterosexual. I did not see any celebration of boys being proud, masculine boys, looking to be lawyers, scientists, doctors, liking girls, and looking to be fathers and family men in the near future. I also did not see any celebration of girls that are feminine, heterosexual girls that like boys, who also one day will want to become doctors, teachers, nurses, chemists, as a mom myself, even marry and have children of their own. These standards had nothing positive to say about heterosexuality. I find that not inclusive at all. By the way, data obtained as of this year, 2022, The homosexual transgender population of the USA is less than 5% across our nation. California has 4.7%. New Jersey has 3.65%. North Dakota has as low as 2.49%. So we are celebrating and promoting only 5% of our population ideals and set of values. This cannot be. Let me go to the lessons now. I was looking at the curriculum. Lesson 2.1.5 DGP.4 grade target grade is 5th, but these grades are bundled 3rd, 4th, and 5th grade, meaning target grade is 5th grade. It has to be taught by 5th grade, but it could start as soon as 3rd grade. This lesson is all about hormones. The lesson reviews what puberty blockers are and how they stop the impact of naturally occurring hormones for a youth who is transgender. We're talking about 8, 9, 10 years old. The students are encouraged to talk to their teacher and pediatrician about taking these drugs if they desire so, which is absurd. If a child has a serious disease, let's say cancer, I, as a parent, do not tell him, go speak to the pediatrician and decide which therapy or treatment you're going to get as a child. We're talking about a serious disease, cancer, and we're talking about a serious issue, transgenderism and changing identity. A minor does not have much discernment in medical treatments and care. How can we even tell a child to decide and change gender before they are adults? A decision that has such serious life consequences. Also, puberty blockers, there are very few studies done on these, and the few studies done show they have very serious and negative side effects. First of all, puberty blockers are still not FDA approved. They have a high risk of serious physical and psychological damage. There is evidence that puberty blockers produce brain swelling and vision loss in children. This should not be in any student class. Anyway, also in that class, again, 8, 9, 10 years old, I copied this from the curriculum. Explain the difference between being cisgender and transgender using the definitions there. This is telling the teacher what to say. Say something like, if someone is transgender, that means that they might have a vulva or ovaries and start going through puberty, but it doesn't make sense to them because they know that they are not female, they are male or non-binary or another gender. We're talking about 8, 9, 10 years old. This is very confusing. This is more damaging. Next, bear with me, Jenny. So I found this lesson and I only shown it to you because I'm embarrassed to do this, but I want you to feel what children will feel when they see this picture among their classmates. We're talking about 8, 9, 10 years old, seeing this picture in the smart board, girls and boys talking about the female part. Lesson 2.5.1 PP1 grade, target grade 5, but it could be taught from 3rd, 4th, and 5th grade. Sexual and reproductive anatomy. So students will be shown this sexual PowerPoint in front of the whole class. They will discuss the vagina opening from where a menstruating blood comes out, where the outer and inner labia, where the scrotum is. They also will be showing this is the clitoris located above the urethral opening. It doesn't have anything to do with reproduction, but it's very sensitive when it's touched. Again, 8, 9, 10 years old. Is this necessary? It is not. Another lesson, and this is it's a little concerning to me. Lesson 1.2.5 SSH2, target grade, 4th grade. What is love anyway? 8 years old children will be asked to differentiate between love and liking when they cannot emotionally or psychologically even understand what romantic love is. 8 years old. So this is what the curriculum tells the teacher to say. As we get older, our feelings start to change. We may experience a type of romantic love that we don't have when we are younger. It is really hard to explain because just like the liking and loving we just talked about is something you know when you feel it. This is very subjective. By the end of 2nd grade, 8 years old girls will know that they have a vulva, which is the area between their legs, and a very sensitive area called the clitoris. The whole curriculum reminds me of suggesting questioning, which is a type of illegal police questioning where police confuses a minor or a person being questioned with suggestive information. We're talking about a teacher talking to this strong information to children without an advocate present for that child to protect or to guide the child. So this sounds to me more like a suggestive teaching to minors, where the information being given, especially to minors without the presence of an advocate, will change that child's interpretation of what is right and wrong, true or false. So this information, again, I am very concerned. Many counties, districts have looked into this and I said, this is inappropriate. They have given accommodations in different ways. I don't see after 2 years of lack of learning, lack of growing in math and in language arts, this is not that, the focus that could be done by its town. This is not, I think, what the town needs, especially this is not what our children needs. That's what I'm thinking. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Bonam Henny.
Hi, I'm Brianne Heaney, 9 Hazelton Street. Just a concerned parent. I honestly didn't get to see everything, but what I did see was concerning. Now, don't get me wrong, when I was younger in town, we did learn about our bodies and the guys all went into one room with a male teacher and the girls went into another room. So we all had a gist of everything, but we focused on really our genders, body parts a little bit more. So it was less awkward. So the idea of having it all together is a little unnerving. Some of the topics has changed, which is fine, but it is very confusing. And there's a lot of things that I'm like, immediately, I have to opt you out. And parents complain they're missing something, but we're not going to miss anything because we talk to our children. That's where we should get some of those principles from. I have a strong faith and I talk to my son about it. And he knows that when the time is right, he'll learn about these things, but he's a child. And these are things that adults should be discussing, or even later on when they're in high school, a little bit more as they're developing themselves. But their job right now is to play, make friends, and just be whatever you want to be, and then explore it a little bit more later. I think after surviving COVID, that we've had some loss in math and things like that. I don't know why we're spending time fighting about these things when we have great goals and education that we could be battling towards, and make that a focus at their young age. I'm not knocking it for the older grades, but there's a lot of things that we could create the wholesomeness and activities, events to heighten education that we're kind of missing. Now we're going to confuse them. And it's a shame because I think learning is good and we need to learn a little bit about each other, but to the extent that some families, it's reaching too far. And I'm not saying that we have to get rid of it, but definitely a modification is a great idea, and even medium based on what we're seeing online. No one can agree, keep it or not keep it, but definitely think about what are we really targeting that would help everyone feel included, but not exclude just somebody being, heterosexual or whatnot, because then they might think there's something wrong with them now because they're not extra special in who they are. So just please consider that, we need to see everything. Even posting it is great, but a lot of people don't know where to find anything. I think it'd be awesome if the district sent out, here's an update to the link of where it is, and that'll give people a chance to find it. Okay.
I agree. You had mentioned that I am the chair of the Faculties and Programs Committee. That's why I was a little bit caught off guard, because I did not know that it was going to be posted tomorrow. So we have a Faculties and Programs Committee meeting next week. So I kind of want like a timeline, like when are the parents going to, in the community, when are we going to get that information? What's in the curriculum? Would you be able to provide a timeline, please?
No, exactly. And that's why, Mrs. Rodriguez, I'd rather talk to you and that committee before we, as an organizing body, discuss that and propose that out to the committee. I'm proposing August 17th, that would be our town hall meeting. But again, I want to make sure that members of the Teaching and Learning Committee are okay with that.
The Faculties and Program Committee. Okay. So tomorrow, the curriculum will be finalized. Will it be available next week for the curriculum committee?
It will be ready for the committee next week, yes.
Okay, so we can continue this conversation in that committee meeting.
I think that's a brilliant idea. Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Is there a way that you could provide that sooner? Like if it's ready tomorrow, just to have it so that we can review it before the meeting,
Absolutely.
it's in depth.
For the Faculty and Programs Committee, absolutely makes a lot of sense. So I'd say sometime this weekend. I'd like an opportunity to review it too.
Yes.
So sometime this weekend for the Faculty and Programs, yes.
So the F&P committee will meet Tuesday, August 2nd at 6 o'clock.
I just wanted to say that the more engaged the public is with information and the way they get it is great because we feel, well, I can't speak for everyone, but I know everyone feels like there's a rush to get this going and we don't know what's inside and it's making people nervous. So we have that information, it gets sent out effectively through like a district-wide email or something, then it would be, everybody has a chance to really see it where other people may not know where to look. That would be great. Thank you.
I think that's good. I just want to refer back to the last meeting when Taz presented. And again, how proud I was of this community for having some wonderful exchanges of conversations because we know that this is a contentious topic. And yet I still felt everybody was able to express themselves and understand different points of view and move this forward. And that's why I'd like an opportunity to work with the governing body of the Faculty and Programs Committee, talk amongst ourselves, and then release it to the community for public comment. Hopefully on the 17th. That's kind of a rough timeline. Great. So there's nobody signed up, but online or? Yep, go ahead.
Hi, Olga Rios, 388 Main Street. I just walked in, so I don't know exactly what's happening, but I did have a few things I wanted to say, which was, I know right now we're trying to set goals for the district. And I think one of the important goals that I was speaking to my sister about is having a better special needs education program so that not so many kids have to be sent out of district, because my niece is sent out of district because we don't have here what she needs. So to me, that's one of the things that I would like to maybe see the district approach. Another thing is in regards to the questions and the answers. I would like, I don't know why you guys don't answer questions in person, but I would like to be able to have the answers to the questions that we post more in advance, so that if we have a follow-up question to our question or, whatever answer you gave, then we would have an opportunity to have that, as opposed to, I think as of yesterday, the questions hadn't been answered yesterday. I didn't check this morning, so I'm not sure exactly what is happening. And then with regards to the curriculum that you guys were just speaking about, I would just like to point out that school starts September 8th. And if you guys are finalizing or reviewing or posting, I don't exactly know, like by August 17, then at that point, there is no input from us parents. Like if we see something that maybe we are not maybe we're not happy with, or there's something that we have concerns about, by August 17, it's already, I guess too late. And you said the curriculum's already been written and it just has to be like reviewed by the board of, I don't know what it's called, but so who exactly, who got together and wrote this curriculum?
So there are a number of questions there. I want to go back to, there were 10 questions posted from the last meeting. And again, I'd like the opportunity to review those questions along with the curriculum with the Faculty and Programs Committee and review, if that's another question, add that to that. So I think I would be giving a disservice to both the superintendent and the Board of Education, which is one of the things we learn about good governance, if I don't include members of the board and that committee in this discussion. So I'd like to sit with them, have some time to look at the curriculum, look at the questions, and our goal is to present that to the public on the 17th. The 17th, in my mind, is a continue of the discussion that we started last week, which again, I was very proud of the community of learning that we had that had an open discussion about it. And the 17th will give you the opportunity to look at lessons, look through the curriculum, identify things that you may find objectionable, and we'll explain the opt-out process at that point.
Will parents be able to see that curriculum before the 17th?
Yes.
Okay.
It will. Yes.
All right. So, and again, I mean, I get a lot of emails, or text messages like something was posted, or, as Brianna mentioned, it would be great if we can get, like the whole town sort of, because everybody here pays taxes that go towards the schools. So it's also important that people who, even those that don't have children in the schools, feel like their money is going towards, a good education or something, I guess, smart and, not, as Brianna said, there's a lot of things that we are maybe lacking now after 2 years of, like COVID really messed up, everything basically. So maybe, the kids are a little bit behind on certain things. So it would be, in my opinion, important to focus on more academics. And, I'm not saying that the new health curriculum is not important, but also, there's a bigger picture that we can, focus on. And, as I mentioned last time, it'll be, I find that for myself and maybe for other parents, I wouldn't mind, instead of doing, 100-day of school project, like a health and, sex education project, with my children. So that's, once a marking period, it would be good, for us parents too, to have the opportunity to explain to our children how, like what our beliefs are, or, how we want to explain to them certain things, while you guys are also, while the school is also doing what they're supposed to be doing, you're giving the parents the opportunity to do, to be the ones in charge of their children. Thank you.
Ms. Rios, just to follow up to your question, and just to promote more clarity and transparency to everybody online and everybody present, is that our timeline was to get the curriculum written by the staff and administrators led by our acting superintendent, it be brought in front of the faculties and programs committee, reviewed, questions, answers, and that level. Then the feedback goes back to the administrators. And then obviously the timeline would be that we would host the 17th for more further input after it's been posted.
Okay.
So just,
And also, I don't, who exactly wrote the curriculum? I know that you were in charge for a while, and I don't know if you still are, or what it is that your role in that is. So I was just wondering, like, who is now in charge and how many other teachers or how many people are involved in that, writing?
So yes, my title is still Director of Curriculum Instruction and Acting Superintendent. So I do supervise the curriculum. If you'll remember, about 6 months ago, Mr. Demikoff and I worked to post a new position that's called the Assistant to the Director of Curriculum Instruction, and that is occupied by Nicole Pucciarelli. Nicole Pucciarelli spearheaded the writing of this curriculum, working closely and in tandem with Little Ferry and surrounding communities and our phys ed and health department. So she gathered a lot of input, but I'll say that she really did a superior job in spearheading this, working closely with people in the health and phys ed department and close communities around us to make sure that we were in alignment with the communities around us.
Dr. Haines, could we invite Nicole to come to our meeting with the board next week?
So Nicole's been working very diligently and hard because she'll be in Wyoming. That's kind of her gift. And so I said I would take that over for her next week, but we can create a list of questions for her certainly after. No, exactly. She understood.
Dr. Haines, quick question.
Please.
I have one question is, in thinking about the date, the 2-week notice before the beginning of school, I just want to remind myself and everybody else that it's not like September 8th is going to be sex ed day. And on September 9th, your kids are going to come home with their eyes, wide-eyed and confused. this is going to be an ongoing process, like with any other educational endeavor. So I just want to, encourage parents to, first of all, speak to the teacher. And I wanted to ask Dr. Haynes, would it be possible, and I may be opening up a can of worms that you're going to kill me for this, but would it be possible with these kind of more, I hate to use the word touchy subjects, that the teachers send home, as they do with projects and topics, send home a notice saying this week we'll be covering XYZ. Here's, it could be a standard group email to their class. This is what's going to be going on in class on Tuesday. And then parents can opt out or send their kids, relieved that the school is teaching their kids.
So that's exactly the discussion that I expect will ensue on the 17th, that we come up to these topics, we as a learning community look at the opt-out form and discuss how we want to proceed. And to your point, Dr. Martinez, in my mind, there will be suggestions of, can we have some advance notice about some of these topics coming up? And here's the process we put in place to make sure that parents have an opportunity to not have their students participate if they want to. That's in my mind what happens on the 17th.
Like literacy and mathematics, there is a pacing calendar. So maybe having a pacing calendar for health.
So the beginning of each curriculum guide includes a pacing guide.
And maybe
That's
sharing that
baked into
pacing
it. We'll
calendar.
be sharing, that's right. That will be shared for each unit of the health and phys ed curriculum that we'll be looking at. So Mrs. Kelly is going to promote a person online with a question.
Good evening.
Mrs. Raftery, right now you're muted. If you could unmute. Mrs. Raftery, did you want to say something? Mrs. Raftery, we're going to move on to somebody else who has a comment and we'll come back to you.
Good evening.
Hello.
Hey, good evening.
Josh.
Hi, how are you? My name is Josh Olay, 126 Teaneck Road. My concerns are, you said that you guys have the curriculum finished. My concern is, who made the curriculum? Was it pediatrics, doctors, actual medical field people, or was it a group of random people saying that, oh, this is how it's going to be taught. This is what the curriculum is going to be. And my other concern is the teachers are going to get any training to teach this, or is it going to be an actual, pediatric doctor that's going to come in and teach this course and stuff like that? Because honestly, I don't feel comfortable having a teacher teach any of the subjects that we're discussing today in class to any of my kids. I have a 4-year-old that's going to go into kindergarten. I have, a 6-year-old is going to go into 2nd grade. I have a son in high school. I have a disabled child that's in high school now. And in his world, he doesn't, me as a parent, I still have to help him take a shower sometimes. So it's mind-boggling that my son is going to go to school and be taught this by non-professional people, whether you're in the, education industry or not, but you're not in the medical industry, you're not in the medical field. That's where my concerns are. And then you're saying the curriculum is done and we don't get to see it yet. If it's done, post it. Let us see it. Let us see what it's going to be about. Because in my world, if you're going to teach that transgender is okay, this kid feels, this type of way, a male boy wants to be a girl, and it's okay. And we have to teach that in class and say that, oh, it's going to be all right. No, let me put on a dress as a male. Let me put on a dress and enter the bathroom with the 10-year-old girl and say, well, guess what? I'm transgender. I'm a girl now. I identify as her, not as him. Is that okay with you? Is that okay for me to do that? Because that is exactly what you're saying that it is okay to do by teaching these curriculums in class incorrectly. It just doesn't make any sense how you're going to go about teaching this. No response?
Are you finished?
I'm done.
Okay. So again, a lot of those questions will be answered. Again, I want to defer to, I just want to say teaching and learning, faculty and programs committee. They deserve to have an opportunity to look through the curriculum and discuss it because that's their role, that's their governing role. Some of the questions that you bring up are already built into district policy and state laws, such as gender neutral bathrooms, which is something that we have to implement as a school and we'll be following also. Again, I sympathize with many of your comments and there's a place for that, and that will be after the curriculum is posted online and as an opportunity for discussion at the August 17th meeting.
Is there any debate in the curriculum that us as parents, as people in the community have a say on what the curriculum is going to be, or any option on that? Or is it you guys have?
So there were a few things, again, for discussion at the August 17th meeting. And I think you said who wrote the curriculum. And I mentioned that it was spearheaded by the assistant to the director of curriculum and instruction, that the professionals who are hired in our district, they also have professional licenses and credentials, and they are schooled in what they do in their profession. And as the superintendent, I'm very proud of many of the professionals that we have. I would strongly suggest, again, if you have those questions, the better forum for those is August 17th, when we will have a community discussion about this. And also opting out of lessons that are objectionable.
That was my other concern, opting out. When our children get opt out, what's going to be done? Are they going to get put into another room and stuff like that? Or are these all questions that August 17th we're going to have to go back to and get answers for at that time?
Josh, it's actually built into the curriculum what your options are during the opt-out process.
I understand it's built into curriculum if I choose to opt out my son or my kids out of the curriculum or out of the class, but what steps are going to be taken after that? If my kid goes to lunch with everybody else and then they start talking about this and this, or how are you guys going to handle that my kid comes home and says, well, you know what, they were talking about this in lunchroom and this and that, and I'm really like, well, I have to sit there and teach you and explain to you this is what's going on in school. Don't worry about it. That I'm, as a parent, as your parent, I'm going to teach you about this or explain it to you in a way that I know how to, because I've raised you. That's my concern. My kid is still going to hear it in school. My kid is still going to talk about it, or people are going to talk around him about it or around her, you know, and I don't need that. I feel like we don't need that at all. Sex, I'm not saying sex ed is bad. Sex ed is bad or whatever it is, but you need to make sure that what you're going to teach is going to be taught in a manner where you're not confusing them more. You might say, no, it's not. We're not going to be confusing them because the curriculum is age oriented. So it's like this grade to this grade is going to be taught certain thing. This grade to this grade is going to be taught something else. The following, you know, the steps for it. Like my son doesn't need to know about a vagina at the moment. Doesn't.
Well, thank you, Josh. Thank you for your comments. We appreciate it. We're just pressed for time. If you don't mind, we would like to jump on to the next person's comments.
Very well.
Have a good evening. Ms. Raftery?
Ingrid Raftery, can you hear me now?
Yes, ma'am. How are you?
Thank you very much. I apologize that something was wrong with my phone.
Oh, it's okay. It happens.
I'm a bit confused. I was at the last retreat meeting and Tess Weisgerber spoke and through Zoom, and then Dr. Haines said, you know, send in a question per email, we answer it. Personally, you know, I don't agree with the way of doing it that way, but there's not a whole lot I can do about. But here's my question. Was Tess Weisberger hired to also be included in writing the curriculum? Because that's where we sort of left off the last time. I know she got paid for that 1 hour already. So was she hired again to write or have input in the curriculum? Hello?
I'm sorry, Mrs. Raftery, but public comment is not a dialogue back and forth, especially for this meeting, which was designated as a board retreat where we experience professional development. Public comment was designated by the rules of board governance and by our policy committee to have public comment. I'll be happy to listen to your entire statement and I'll respond to all of your questions and answers together. And I'll go back to, yes, there were 10 questions that were posted online that will be answered at the August 17th meeting. So please tell me after your comment and I'll address your questions and answers.
I just don't understand why something is public, but then it's through email. I'm very disappointed by that. And August 17th, the curriculum is written already. So just to say then, let's opt out, especially for a high school student, they will talk in the hallway, they will talk, you know, in the classroom, they will talk outside of school. And I am a bit concerned because even the teenagers gonna be a bit confused, some of them. Even so they might be taught what's appropriate. I'm not even gonna say it's gonna be wrong, but what if they're confused? What if they give each other wrong messages or they get the wrong impressions about certain things? And I'm not gonna go into details, but that's a huge concern to me. And I'll be quite frank, I don't feel that government has any business teaching our children extreme sex education. Like I said in my last meeting, I'm not against it, but it needs to be age appropriate and parents should see the curriculum before it's put in input. Because otherwise there's, you know, like I said, like the gentleman before me said, opting out is not the best solution. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you for public comment. We're closing public comment and moving on to the board meeting. I'm going to share my screen just for a minute to set up our guest speaker. Great. Thank you. Just give me a second. Awesome. Thank you, Mr. Hernandez. So the board gets to come together once a year. And this is a really exciting time, certainly for me as the superintendent, and I'd like to thank for the board members too. I wish we had everybody participating in person, but we're going to do that with some remote learners today and board members who are present. We will be led in a couple of minutes, but I want to give a couple of introductory comments before I introduce Ms. Judy Wilson. The first one is our summer programs are going like gangbusters, and you're going to hear a lot more about this at the August 20th board meeting. I'd invite everybody to come back for the August 24th board meeting. But some of the things that have been going on are the Meadowlands Adventures, fantastic field trip Fridays. What you're looking at is Islands of Adventure, which happened today. It was covered by North New Jersey as it was last year. So we expect a pretty fantastic report to come out of that will be published online and also in the newspaper. And you can see we're pretty proud of some of our students being engaged in inquiry-based science activities. Tomorrow, we have a fantastic Friday field trip. It's our last field trip. I should backtrack and say today was the last day of our credit recovery programs at the high school. It was the last day of all of our Title I and Title IV programs at the elementary schools at K-6. And what you're looking at are some of our middle school students in the science project, which also end today. However, the last field trip of the summer is tomorrow. We have about 100 students registered to go to the Meadowlands on buses tomorrow. That makes me ecstatically happy. I'm going to join them as a chaperone. And again, that's our last kind of summer activity as far as our summer programs and money that we're using from CRISA and ARP and learning loss. I wanted to explain that because those are pretty exciting things. They also deal with some of the summer learning things. Again, a reminder, after we meet for a board committee, we intend to have an August 17th presentation. For those of you who are interested, please put that draft note in your calendar. We will confirm that, and I will send it out to the entire district as a school messenger blast to confirm that the committee's looked at that, reviewed the curriculum, and we're ready to have a meeting on that date. And before I move on to the Hechinger report, which I think leads very nicely into Ms. Wilson's presentation, I'll comment about some of our special needs programs. One of the goals that we currently have, which is about to come up for discussion with Ms. Wilson, is our early childhood education and what we're doing from birth to age 5. And one of the topics there was hopefully submitting a successful grant to the state for the Early Education Act and receiving state funds and federal funds to open more pre-K development centers. I'm happy to report that that progress is proceeding and to report that there are some dramatic increases in our special needs classes. For example, last year at this time, we had about 19 students who were in need of age 3 and 4 programs for special needs. As of yesterday, as we've gone through, about 41 students. So as I'll be explaining to the board in the near future, we are in great need of building capacity for that early childhood goal that we need. It's not something we can opt out of. It's something like most districts around Bergen County that we'll be dealing with. It's very tangible and a need that we have in our district. Kind of along those lines too, as we're receiving draft reports back from testing and assessments from the New Jersey Student Learning Standards, and our teachers and our supervisors and principals are learning this. We had an administrative retreat yesterday, this was one of the huge topics. Although we weren't thrilled with our scores, what you're looking at up on the screen is a report that came up from the Hechinger report that looked at the scores from spring assessments of 8 million students. And I'm just going to kind of unpack what you see on the screen a little bit, because our students followed the average of these 8 million students, in that according to the assessments, third graders, and you'll have third graders this year, were in first grade during the pandemic. So they hadn't been in in-person classrooms. They hadn't done any assessments for the past 2 years. This was the first assessment they had taken. So according to an assessment, the Hechinger report predicts it'll take about 5 years for them to catch up, which is a good deal of time. Fourth is high school, so it's a little less. And it goes on. You can see 7th and 8th graders, and our students do follow this average, where they did not perform well because coming of age in middle school in 7th and 8th grade, having been through a pandemic for 2 years, everybody in this room knows what it's like to go through adolescence. And imagine what it was like to go through adolescence during a pandemic. They didn't have those social contexts and that support. And that's what the assessments are telling us. So that's something that we will unpack throughout the year. I bring this up because, and Judy's going to take it from here, assessment is baked into our mission. It is the core of who we are. It is why I had an administrative retreat yesterday, and this is what we looked at, and this is all we discussed for that time we were in a room together of how do we look at students, how do we make sure that they're performing at academic levels, but also how do we support them in getting there in a nurturing environment. That's why we create board goals to support them on their journey. And at this point, I turn over to Judy Wilson to talk about the 3 important goals we have. I'm not going to give Ms. Wilson a background like I did last year. I will say it's always good to have you on our presence. I love the things that you do with the board, and I thank you.
Well, thank you, and good evening. It is very good to be with the board members and the public in what is, in many ways, an unprecedented time. You've heard it, you've experienced it, you have lived it with your families in your community. And I just want to say, for those who are both raising children in the community, sending children to the public schools, and for board members who are here after the end of a very long day in a very warm cafeteria, attending to critically important issues. I know that, people don't often stop you just to say thank you. They stop you with their opinions and concerns, as they should. But I want to say that public service in 2022 is a very challenging, difficult task anywhere. I work with a lot of boards in 4 states. And I can tell you that if at any moment you think, is it just here? It is not. The exact challenges are everywhere, whether it is the topic of what do we need to advance for our children, what might have been missed socially, academically over the last 2.5 years, whether it is about the New Jersey presentation of standards, whether it is about how curriculum is approached in your district, right? There are certainly issues of community, issues of culture, issues of priority, issues of policy that come to bear on all the work that you do. And so when you stop to think, as you do in a board retreat, about process, we're going to spend a little bit of time on process, and then we're going to talk about your 3 specific goals. And we're going to continue that in late August. So this is only like lots of food for thought tonight, a little discussion to get you into this. So your mindset is there. Very happy that the rest of the board is remote with us also. So lots on your plate, Can't address it all at one time, can't address it all deeply, right? Even if you had unlimited resources, which of course no district does. So you're in the business of setting priorities, and you're in the policy work and the financial work and the decision-making work of saying when, how much, right? All of the time, and setting your plans in motion. I have to say, I was applauding the district's board and administrative and faculty work over the last 2 years, not only because of keeping students first and centered in the decisions, but you worked hard to advance those goals in the last years. And you chose goals that gave you focus, that were systemic, that apply to every child, and that are meaningful. And so one of the first things I want to say as we look at your mission and your approach to the work ahead of you is this work is multi-year work. And a few board members might remember me saying deep work takes 3, 4, 5 years. Goals should not be changing every year. It's this false mindset of, it's July and a new fiscal year, or it's September and a new academic year. We must need new goals. No, you've got to follow these goals through deeply and long enough to see success and to have the impact before you ricochet, right, into 5 other areas, right? You're nowhere near saying, let's tie this up with a bow. We really, did incredibly deep work that's ready to be celebrated, but you have really made inroads, right? And you have really started to get people's minds around the importance of these goals. So with that said, and having you, it's hard when you're thinking meeting to meeting, and you have to, but in another regard, as the governing body, you're also responsible for thinking big picture, long term. And when I've been with you in the past, we've done a lot of work around that importance of being systemic, about thinking always pre-K-12 in all of your decisions, about thinking of all your populations, right? Populations of students, populations of families, and also about thinking what it means to be successful, right? Not just this is our goal, but what will that look like when we have done this so well? What will success look like? So we're going to spend a little time on that also. Right? You have this slide deck in your folders. Don't need to do anything with them now. The public can see them also, and board members have them. So just a quick drop back for a minute. I also have to say, I'm used to really being all over the place, but I'm going to be good for a little bit before I walk around with this microphone, be tethered to it for a moment. Everything that happens for Ridgefield Park is tied to your mission, right? Is tied to your mission. And your mission is particular to Ridgefield Park. Your mission is one that was crafted for this community. So I'm just going to ask you to listen to it for a moment. Our mission is to offer students educational opportunities that will foster lifelong learning and enable them to function politically, economically, and socially in a democratic society. Students will be assisted in becoming self-respecting individuals who reach their greatest potential. They will learn to act fairly in relationships with others, solve problems using effective methods, and think critically and independently. All the work of the schools ties back to this is the type of graduate, citizen, person we are aiding, right, in our school system. We are fostering, teaching, nurturing, helping support in order for them to be critical thinkers, good people in the world, people with good relationship skills, right? Reaching their greatest potential. That means that we're helping them learn to think. We're helping them learn to make decisions. We're giving them frameworks in which to do that, right? How to ask great questions, how to solve problems, how to know themselves, and how to see themselves in relationship to others, right? And in relationship to themselves, to their personal growth and their personal understanding. So you come to the board table as volunteers, right? As people who have opened your minds to all of the issues and all of the voices. When you pass policy, when you approve curriculum, when you hire educators, it is with a set of questions in mind. Will this person, will this curriculum, will this policy promote our mission, right? Does it tie back to our mission? Will it advance our work? And you come with a team of 10 and an acting superintendent. So by definition, a team of 11 here to say, how do we do that together? You have individual opinions. You've had individual experiences in life. You're here not as 11 people who think the same way or have had the same experiences. You're here to solve what are the next steps for Ridgefield Park School System, and how do we best go about that? So the role is much more than we have an agenda, right? And we're marching through it. Your role is to always be thinking, I'm going to skip this and come back to it. Your role is to always be thinking with this governance mindset. And there's a lot in here for you to read. I'm just going to highlight, right? So when a board is high functioning, when a board really can work through difficult issues together, as you're doing, as you have done over the last years, and you will get better and better at, boards have a governance mindset. And in this work by Michael Fullen, it means that they're thinking systemically first, right? That you are saying every decision we make, it has an impact on something else, right? If we're talking about the 5th grade curriculum, it matters what we're doing in 4th and 6th, right? If we're talking about high school graduation requirements, it really matters how we're moving kids pre-K through 8 up into that high school experience. If we're spending money over here, money's not getting spent someplace else, right? We've got to think about it always as the impact on the system. The second piece is that you're thinking strategically. It can seem easy, I know, to look at a board agenda and think like approve, this line item for personnel, this line item for spending, this line item for policy. When you are thinking strategically, it's not tactical, it's not technical, right? You're thinking about how we're changing behaviors. You're thinking about how we're changing mindsets. You're thinking about how we are influencing the way we think around here, right? In Ridgefield Park, how we are approaching things. The next piece about having a governance mindset, which is the only way a board can be high functioning, right? Is to really adopt and get better and better at these pieces. It's to be thinking about deep learning, right? So we'll use the example that you discussed during public comment. There's a lot of learning to be happening here on everyone's part, right? Parents, educators, board members, we're all in this learning, like how to make the decisions, what decisions are best, how to pace it. The pacing guide question was a great example. How to assess whatever decisions you make about the curriculum. How will we assess how it's going, right? Because when you adopt a curriculum, that is not the end of the work, right? Because there's still the teaching and learning, the feedback loop, the how'd it go, mid-year, where are we? Next June, where are we in that revision cycle, right? So get deep into the learning. Sometimes we take a vote and we think, good, done. And most of the time, once a vote is taken, it's kind of just like the tip of the iceberg, right? And we really haven't done the deep work yet, right? We've just launched it. It's like, we're in a good enough place to launch. Let's go. And then let's see and monitor and be accountable and have times of assessment to come back and say, how's it going? What's that feedback loop look like? So thinking about this as a deep learner, right, as you come to the table. Oops, sorry. And the last is what you demonstrate all the time. It is very hard to always walk into the board table with that public manner, right? That public manner that says, no matter what, we will model good thinking, good questioning, public discourse that's really healthy, the kind of public discourse we want our children to know and understand and be a part of and be able to engage in. So keeping that modeling of civic behavior, and it can get hard, I know that, having sat at that side of the table for many years, it can get hard, but keeping that in mind and taking that breath, you know, like kind of as you walk in the door. So just a couple more slides, and they tie to lots of the public comment from earlier this evening. In our communities and society today, we throw the word transparency around a lot, right? We want transparency. They need to be more transparent and everywhere. We want to know what that means for you, right? So for a board, I think transparency means not just great communication, but process, right? Can we forecast the process we're going to use as we tackle this decision-making that we need to do, as we tackle this rollout of a program, as we tackle, think about when you first had to make a decision to go remote in March of 2020, right? What kind of approach had to be used? It couldn't be what happens tomorrow, right? You had to be thinking, we all thought it'd be a couple of weeks, right? Remember that? We had to be thinking longer term and how does it matter to so many different layers of people? And you had to be transparent about it. We made this decision because, right? We made this decision because this is the information from the health department. We made this decision because this is how we're working with our unions. We made this decision because our facilities can only do X, right? That transparency, to me, that is sharing the approach, but also sharing rationale, right? Also sharing rationale and being explicit about that rationale. I also just wanted to emphasize that there really are very few chapters in the work of a board member that end, even if you wish they would. There are very few chapters. The ones that do are things that are tactile and technical, like putting in a new field, right? That work is long work, lots of decisions to be made, but the field is going to be open, kids are going to use it, that chapter closes. In the world of policy and program evaluation and curriculum evolution, that is long game work. That is not work that's like tied up with a bow and over and move on. That is always in a cycle, and it's long game. And you have to like always have that long game. Where are we headed in the big picture? So a word about how you do that. Many of you have read Simon Sinek's work in business and in the personal lives and families that we run, certainly in schools. But Simon Sinek talks about the infinite game, right? That when you're in public service and you're in nonprofits, that's the infinite game. It goes on and on and on to another iteration, hopefully to higher performances, but it's a long game. Nobody blows the whistle and says this game's over, right? So what are you prepared to do? In Simon Sinek's world, he says, always, 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 no matter what you do, be able to describe the why, right? The rationale, the why. And if you can't describe the why, then you've got more homework to do as a board. If you can't say, this was our approach, this was our process, and here's the why, the rationale behind our decision of where we are now. We might not be in the same place in a year, but where we are now, right? Then you've missed a little bit on your homework. So always be saying, do we know the why? There is process. And I know the eagerness of parents. You know, I'm a parent myself. My children are older now, but I've lived through lots of curriculum innovations, and you can tell I'm not young. I've lived through lots of cycles of what we've done in history classes and math programs and how we teach kids phonics and how we teach kids sex ed. And I have to say, we've got to remember that when there's a solid process in place, right, and there's opportunity for voice, good decisions come from it, right? So I'm going to ask you, board members who are here and board members who are home, besides the topic of the health and physical education curriculum, which all of New Jersey is grappling with, what else do you think are the big topics that you expect to have on your board plate coming up in the next tonight through 18 months? Now, we never could foresee the pandemic, but some things we can predict. What can you predict are going to be the top issues, not the goals, but the, like, what's going to be on your plate? What do you think?
I think that the development of pre-K is going to be one of the primary issues.
Yes, right? And that has lots of arms to it and lots of layers to it, but absolutely your early childhood work. What else?
Straighten the homeschool connection and getting parents back into the schools.
We everywhere have missed a lot of the presence of schools, of parents in schools, right? We've missed the support, the volunteering, the activities, but we've missed the voice in a lot of ways too. And hard as we all worked to help make remote successful and inclusive and hear voice, it's distant, literally and figuratively adds a layer between us. But that's going to take communication, not just emails, right? That's going to take everything from focus groups and town halls to one-on-ones to really good written communication, as well as presentations to really say we're all back in this now, right? What else do you think might be on the plate of the Ridgefield Park School District?
I think the continuity from what we're putting up as pre-K into the grammar schools, into the middle school, and the introduction of the Little Ferry group into the high school. And what does that continuity look like, both from an educational perspective and from facilities and strategic planning from that perspective, buildings?
So 2 parallel layers to that. You always have your finance and your facility layer in everything that you do. And sometimes it's like, oh, we'll do this. Oh, what about the finance and the facility, right? Other people think of that immediately. But your point is this is a system, right? And if we operate as a set of 13 grades, we are never as strong as when we can think about it as it is a continuum. It's very much a continuum. And what happens in that 5th grade really matters to the juniors, right? When they get to that point. And then you have children coming in at the 9th grade. And that is socialization. That's academic. That's logistics, right? Anything else that you see or anything? I don't know if I'm missing anyone remotely.
Ms. Wilson?
Mr. Fernandez?
I think also to bridge on what Trustee McNeil mentioned was the social and emotional impact that this pandemic had and the ongoing. I think we were going to go through this process called the aftermath, and I think you guys stated it in your Hitchinger report.
The Heckinger report,
So that was pretty that was pretty
stunning,
hit home right away.
Yeah. And there's a lot to be read into that, and there are several studies. The one that Dr. Haines shared with you tonight really smacks us, right? There are others showing not as much loss, but equal impact of social emotional. And there are many researchers, educators, people doing deep studies that are showing us that social and emotional impact is probably the greater worry.
Yeah,
right. That we're going to get that. We're going to get that math and language and social studies, but we've got to really not miss beats with all hands on deck with the social and emotional.
Yeah, with reading and math, you can measure that.
Right.
Those are measurables. With the social and emotional,
it's harder.
It's much harder.
It is, right? It's one reason we're giving more surveys than ever of our students, and we're adding. This is just my educated guess, but I think that with the money that's been spent, the grant money and the federal funding and the hiring that's been done across New Jersey, I think the largest body of educators that's been growing in the last 18 months have been our guidance counselors, psychologists, psychiatrists, social workers. Like the need is mental health clinicians. The need is so great in every school, every type of school.
as a parent of a child who is going into third grade, I've witnessed and I've seen the progress that the district has made in terms of social emotional support.
Yeah.
But when I look at the report, it's like, okay, I have a child who's going into third grade, and then I'm looking at the report and it says grade 3, it takes 5+ years to catch up. What are we doing academically too? And then
Right.
we've had issues in the past in terms of class sizes. And drive around Ridgefield Park, and going back to what you said about the
Growth.
buildings, our facilities, there has to be a focus, because we can't have 25, we shouldn't even have more than 20 students in a classroom, especially when there's a gap, especially when our kids are struggling academically. What programs, what is being put in place to support our students, all of our students?
And as a board member, sitting on that side of the table, there's the question about what you see as a parent and what others are seeing, and then making the decision about how do we tell that story. And when I say tell that story, I mean the professional narrative, right? Of this is how we are responding. This is how Ridgefield Park is assessing how our kids are growing, how we know what they're able to do and not do yet, what their needs are, and what we're putting in place, right? And how that might need to fluctuate over the next 18 months, but this is how we're using summer programs. This is how we're using after school programs. This is what we're changing in the curriculum. All of those pieces, so that as quickly as possible, those gaps narrow, right? They're not going to narrow in 6 months, but as quickly as possible, how do we know they're narrowing? Other pieces that are going to be really important. We'll just take one or two more.
If I may?
Reiterate, sorry.
I was just going to say our teaching staff has gone from being villains to being heroes to being villains to having their entire way of doing business upended. And not to mention the controversies and scandals that we had in this district before, which may have led our teachers to not trust what comes next and be afraid.
So of course you used a very critical word, which is trust. And we're going to spend some time on that tonight and in the late August session, because it's fundamental to everything, right? And no district moving where a faculty doesn't want to go, right? Your faculty is the lifeblood of the community in terms of we're in the classroom with children, we're the educators, and we're working very hard and have worked very hard and will continue to work very hard, right? But we need to do it on the same page, right? And that has to be foundational. I think there was
one of the
one
other
more.
things we have to look at, and Mrs. Rodriguez said, we have to plan for the future. We have a lot of building going on in this community. We have to assess our phys lands.
Yes.
What is going to be the increase in population of students?
Yeah.
And you have to look 10, 15 years out to plan for that.
You do, because as we know, changes in facilities take multiple years. They don't have, unless it's just like a very little tweak, they do not happen in a summer. So it's the financial planning, it's the land, it's the where can we add, what has to change? Are we meeting the programs? Do our buildings actually meet the program demands? So I'm going to kind of jump to this and say that I'd like you to have this framework in mind before we go into these approaches. And it's this. There are board goals and there are district goals. And I would beg you not to conflate them. It's hard because it's sort of like board, district, all one. And I'm just going to paint this picture of saying that when the board sets goals for itself, right, for the work of the board, that's what this interpretation is, right? The work of the board. And that would be exactly what Mr. Cathcart just said. That would be policy, obviously, finance, which is twofold. Sometimes you get to the point where you're like, phew, it's March and we adopted a budget, done, right? But to your point, no, you don't know what your state aid looks like in 5 years, but you do know your facility needs, right? And you do know your capital reserve numbers, right? Facility,
So with board goals, and I need some history here, I'm not sure that this governing body has done board goals, certainly
Yes,
recently
and-
or
and
ever.
maybe
I'm not
not.
sure. Right. And
Maybe
so,
not.
So when I mention district goals or board goals, I think the same thing. I'm not sure there's a history to hang your coat on or anything about,
Okay.
do we have an understanding what board goals are?
So let's just think about this. We're going to unpack board goals in our next session. So you'll have time to see if this fits right for you, fits well for you. But to be a highly functioning board, right, that does the best work it can do, what are our goals around policy? What are our goals around finance? What are our goals around facilities? Those three pieces belong to no one else. That's an easier way to say it, right? They're not faculty pieces. They're not support staff pieces. They are the work of the internal group of 10 plus superintendent, right? And that goes on to include how the board behaves, like modeling that civic behavior, and the evaluation of the superintendent. Those bodies of work don't belong to anybody except this group and our remote friends, this group and our remote friends, right? So when you set board goals, it might be around, I'll just make them up. These don't necessarily apply to you at this moment, but it might be around, do we need a demographic study of the community growth, the numbers of units of housing being built, the anticipated number of children coming along with that housing. It might be simply square footage in the high school and how many students can we really serve well in that high school, knowing our enrollment projection for the next 10 years. When you look at policy, finance, and facilities, it is systemic. It has to be systemic. You have to be looking pre-K through 12 and know that no one else is going to address that. You know, no faculty department or grade level, no community group, no parent group, like that is the work of the board. So when a board sets goals for itself, sometimes from year to year, a board needs to say, among the 10 of us, we haven't been as strong at hearing each other, knowing what we're thinking, working on process together, right? Being transparent with one another, trusting one another. That just like in families, like this happens with boards over years from time to time. Sometimes that's a board goal. Other times it's like, we're pretty solid and we're going to work on, we haven't looked at our governance policy section for 6 years, right? You have to determine what will make you a stronger board. And again, don't set 12 goals, 1 or 2, right? The ones that rise to the top that you can actually tackle. Mrs. Fernandez? Oh, no, I'm sorry.
I see policy, finance, facilities. Where does academics and curriculum fall in place? We are here for the
Yes.
children. So
Yes, they go right to the district goals, Mrs. Rodriguez. You're absolutely right. So that's the
So
core of what
academics-
happens here. So when we look at district goals are board business, but district goals touch every employee in your care, right? These pieces are not exempt from the board. The board is right there on leading district goals, on making sure that there are resources for district goals, on getting input on how it's going, how are we being held accountable, what does assessment look like. But when we talk district goals, that is everybody in Ridgefield Park knows this goal and has a role in it somehow, in the SEL work, in the early childhood work, in the curriculum work, right? Everything reports to the board. Everything that happens reports to the board, to the facilities committee, to the finance committee, to the faculty and program committee, right? Absolutely. But really high functioning boards will say, how are we functioning as a board and to what do we need to attend? That's only our business. And what are our district goals? That's everybody, every child, right? Every employee is going to know this work and know how we feed into it. One way to look at it, there are boards that have good board goals and not paying enough attention to district goals. And there are boards that have district goals that are mainly teaching and learning and student-centered and essential. That's our work, that's your mission. But don't think about how we are functioning as a board, right? And is there something that we're missing? So think about those, right? See if there's a need. You're very good at attending to your district goals, and you're going to get better because we're going to talk about how to get better. But think about whether there's a need for you as a unit to say, are there board goals, our board level work that we should really be paying attention to?
So I'm just confused.
Okay.
With these next two meetings, this and the next one,
Yeah.
are we setting district goals?
Tonight, we're going to look at the district goals. In the next session, we're going to ask, are there board goals that you should begin to craft and think about?
Okay.
Yep. So let's frame it in a little different way. Your district goals, as I mentioned, are long-term, right? Yeah, big bodies of work that you're attending to are 3, 4, 5 years in the making. And you have to know what it looks like when we're really good at that, what it looks like when we've been successful. You have to have some image of that up front, right? From the minute that you decide this is one of our goals. So let's look at your goals. A year ago, remember where you were, right? Are we remote? Are we in person? How are we going to manage this? What if kids lost? How are we coming back together? And the goals were listed as, these are our goals for 21-22. I would really encourage you to think about, these are our goals for 21-24 or 21-25. These are big bodies of work that you need to stick with. You need to be persistent with so that you can actually see the impact that the work has had, right? The outcomes for your children. You're not going to see quick outcomes in 8 months of work in a school year. That said.
But should we have like
Yeah.
a sub goal sometimes?
Pardon me?
Maybe a sub goals, like as things change?
Absolutely. So when you think about this, these are going to be matched by SMART goals or measurable outcomes. What happens over time? What does it take for us to get there, right? This is just like the big broad stroke. We need to be a lot more definitive and structured in how we go about it so that we can say, how are we assessing? And does it look like a SMART goal?
The reason I asked that is because in Dr. Haines' report earlier tonight, basically the special ed population is like almost doubling. And, yeah, we're care for all kids, but that's something in addition and really have to think about and add a lot more to this
It
goal.
is. It absolutely is. And I, that struck all of us, those numbers, I'm sure, as a outsider here tonight. I was like, that is something to really be paying attention to. And does it come as another district goal? Does it replace one of them? Or is it part of this, right? They're the kinds of questions that you might be asking yourselves because that can't be ignored, right? It's going to demand resources. It's going to demand facilities, right? And we have to know how we're making progress there. Dr. Haines?
So kind of back to an earlier comment too. Every community, every district, this is the joy in my mind of this meeting. This is our civic pride and this governing body for Ridgefield Park. And some of the uniqueness in Ridgefield Park is the social justice resolution, for example.
Yes.
Is good. Berlinda, do you want to say, Mrs. Rodriguez?
I was a little bit confused with like when I see the board goals and district goals, but when last year we looked at the policies And we took into also consideration all of our children, our special needs population, our kids in district, out of district. So when we set these goals, we actually looked at, when we set these district goals, we looked at policies. So wouldn't, we are responsible for district goals, but then also policy should be under district goals too.
Oh, okay. All of the work in a district goal will include curriculum, policy. Do we have the resources, right? All of it. You're absolutely right. Like to your point, district goals exclude almost nothing, right? Board goals are really the things that nobody else can attend to but you, how you function as a team, right? They're not exclusive, but if you're not looking at how you're functioning as a team or asking yourselves the question, are there things to which we haven't paid enough attention? Enrollment data, special education data, policy development, right? Then we better get on that as a board, right? But you're absolutely right. When you look at any one of your goals, it has policy in it. It has resources and finances in it. Sometimes it has facilities under it. Absolutely. And that's because you're looking at it systemically. Yep, absolutely.
Remember having this conversation with you, and that is the reason I'm just going back, we included all children are known. The word all.
Emphatically.
We don't want to leave any child behind.
I remember that discussion well, and I was so supportive of it. It's emphatic that it's all, right? You're not developing programs for some kids, right? And you're not setting goals for some kids.
But they're also large and, big, hairy goals and inclusive. So when I hear Mr. Gomes say, we're increasing our special education population, we have this goal because it addresses all students. When I think about the social justice resolution, we're trying to ensure all students. When I think about the LGBTQ policy that we have in place, that we need to work on as a district to make sure that everybody is aware of and supportive and pays attention to. That's all teachers, administrators, students, that's everybody in our
Anyone who's
district.
part of your mission. Yes.
Right. And so, I love this. I've had board members over the past 3 months say, I think we're doing really well, as in maybe we can cross that off the list. And I think in my mind, we're doing okay with some parent and family engagement this past year. We did well in K through 6. We have a lot of opportunities for growth in 6 through 12 and things that will unveil in September, October, November through the administration of the faculty. But these are long-term goals, as you said, inclusive.
Inclusive, and also including those students that are on grade level. And we do have programs for our like enrichment programs for our gifted and talented, and we do have BSI and for our kids with who our kids are I don't know, it's below grade level, but also those students that are on grade level. What we are doing as a district so they can achieve and exceed standards, go above and beyond. We have to not neglect those students too.
Yeah. And that's the systemic piece. That point is so well taken, because again, it's not just some kids, right? It's where every one of your children who comes into Ridgefield Park, what does that person need? Yeah.
As you're talking about children, you're also, excuse me, talking about the stakeholders, their parents.
Yes.
So they should also be involved in every aspect of the child's
Absolutely.
education.
So, we've talked in the past about voice and choice, but access, approach, voice for parents, for community members who are taxpayers without children in your school, and for the educators, right? There has to be an avenue. That avenue isn't endless, right? But that avenue has to be structured, public, transparent, and true listening, right? True listening. So let me take that up. I think that Mrs. McNeil, you have a point to make or a question. And then before we hit these 3 goals, let me just go over an approach piece for you, and then invite you to stand for 5 minutes, get water, and take a break and come back. And I just want to tell you, we're going to unpack each of these district goals to hear, where do you think you are? What does success look like? And that's where we're going to get tonight. Okay, so Mrs. McNeil.
I think you might be tackling it when we come back from our break. But my
Okay.
point of view on the three goals is this first goal is definitely inclusive of every grade, every student. And I think that we need some better clarity on how does it get implemented
Yes.
at each level for every student? What does it look like? I hear you on the LGBTQ policy. As someone said, that's 5% of the country's population. The other 95%, we need to make sure are part of that. And then the other two goals are very specific to age groups. And I think, the question on the approach, so pre-K being a 5-year goal, universal pre-K, what does that bring to the total district? And and that goes to my comment on continuity from pre-K through graduation in high school. And conversely, the high school having the goals of college and career readiness. Well, what do the younger grades do that contribute to that? Like, I
Yes.
feel like it's got to be more comprehensive where we are all pulling in the same direction and there
Mhm.
isn't a person pulling for early childhood and a person
Right.
pulling for college and career. It's the district.
It's a team and it's the district. So to your point, to help you envision this, I have to say that when this is deep across the district, there won't be an employee who doesn't know we're working on these three things. They might not be able to cite, nor would I expect them to, right? The way it's written in a sentence, but they'll be able to say, in Ridgefield Park right now, for the next years, we are working on every child being known and cared for, career and college readiness, and early childhood education. And this is what it looks like for me. This is my role in it, right? Because everybody has to play that role, no matter who or what you teach. So let's just look at this one piece about approach, because I think it's going to help you as you move forward to your August town hall and to other topics, no matter what the topic would be. So the word approach, if you could ask each other all of the time, if you could literally say, as a board member, I'm going to come to the table and say, what's our approach? Before you start to say, what are the facts? What's our goal, right? How much does it cost? What are we try very hard to say to each other, what will our approach be to this challenge? Because you're going to have endless challenges and your approaches will have these basic components and then particular components depending on the topic. So, what's our approach? How are we being reflective? Like, what do we know now? And what do we need to learn? Right? That's always the first question. What do we know? And what do we need to learn? What are the gaps that we don't have in front of us right now? What are the bodies of information or knowledge we don't know right now? How to go out and get it, right? How to be reflective about that. Can we really define the challenge and the problem, right? Can we actually describe it and define it? A lot of times we work very hard on solving that we think is the problem, and it wasn't the problem. We just never defined it right from the very beginning. Can we establish who should be engaged and when? So if I take the curriculum example, any curriculum, your professionals write the curriculum with resources, with consultants sometimes, right? And you have a process. It goes to your faculty and program committee, right? Then it goes to the public comment. Then it goes to perhaps a town hall if needed, comes back to the board. You've got a process in place. But that process has to be clear to everybody, right? From the early stage. You kind of create what Hackett calls this web of opportunity. Now, the web of opportunity isn't open-ended. It's not going to be 3 years, but it's going to be in the course of 6 weeks or 6 months. Here's the web of opportunity for voice, for input, right? For hearing, listening, pushing back, being inquisitive. It's certainly enlisting other people outside of the board and assigning the charges, like to your assistant director of curriculum, we need this by this point, and it's going to then go to the committee. Bring, I hate the word blockers, this is just his term, bring challengers. We need challengers to help us think better, right? And so we don't get blindsided later by like, we didn't think about that, right? Have your communication plan and your time frame out there. And when Hackett says face the public, he means what Simon Sinek says. Know your why. Be able to say to the public, this is the arc of the story. This is what we know. This is what we've done. This is where we think we're going, right? Be able to say that publicly. It's a good little list, right? It's a good little list when you're trying to solve any kind of problem, but it really is a great board list. Like, is there time for reflection? Have we asked each other, what's our approach going to be? Right? Do we have all the information we need and what's missing? Not just we got this part of the information and we'll work from there. Like, what might be missing? Creating your web of opportunity and being public about the arc of the story. We're not perfect, right? We are a group of human beings serving our community, doing the best we can with what we know. This is where we are today. We'll get better, we'll get stronger, we'll learn from the first year, we'll learn from the first round of implementation, but today this is where we are, right? I love this as an operating model for challenging situations and for new situations, right? And you can use it in an hour or you can use it over the course of a year. But pushing each other to use it is really important. You just get better and better at your work. So you need to stand, and I'm going to say a very strict 5 minutes, but when we come back, we're going to unpack those 3 goals and just say what we know tonight, what's in motion, and what does success look like? The only 2 questions we're going to ask, okay? What's already in motion and what does it look like when we're really successful? Okay, somebody already beeped for me. Thank you. 5 minutes.
The landscape that I got today where I'm staying.
How are you doing? Okay, great board members. Thank you so much. We're going to just unpack these goals and that's it. So I know it's getting closer and closer in here and you're feeling it, but when you set a goal for yourself, when your child sets a goal, when an athlete sets a goal, right? You have to know and have some kind of mental model about what success looks like, right? It can't just be a let's try this. It has to be because when I'm good at it, it will look like this, or it will look closer to this. There has to be some kind of mental model and some description about this is what success looks like. So I'm just going to ask you, very freewheeling here, and folks working with us from home, don't hesitate to chime in. As you think about the work that's been done, and it shifted a lot. You've already alluded to this actually very directly. It has shifted a lot when we think about children's needs over the last 2.5 years of COVID. But when you think about what strides have we made, what have we put in motion, not what's done perfectly yet or finished, right? Where have we made inroads in the goal of all students known, included, cared for, and evolving in their self-awareness, identity, and agency? So under that, you really were talking about building systems of support. You were systemic right from the beginning, right? It wasn't just, we're going to have another 9th grade counselor. It was like, what does our counseling look like pre-K to 12, right? Building these systems for support, instruction, and student opportunities that ensure that all children are known, included, and cared for, and guide children as they develop. So when you were brainstorming and thinking about that in its early stages, you thought about trauma-informed practices. Do we really know what that looks like in our classrooms? Do our faculty members, counselors, and support staff know what that is and how to practice trauma-informed conversation and support and counseling? You thought about what it looked like to embed listening circles and have professional development around listening circles in the schools. What else do you think in the last year and a half, where else have you made inroads or strides? And you might all be looking to Barry at this point for him to say, here's the list. That's fair. But is there anything that comes to mind that the district has more than stepped its toe into, right? Made a little commitment to and moved forward with?
I was going to say, just taking a step back and seeing how our goals are tied into our district fiscally. Everything's earmarked for certain things, and you can see how it's gauged from these 3 goals.
Yeah. Which is ideal, right? Your budget tells a story. And if your goals aren't reflected in your budget and your budget doesn't tell the story of these goals, it's like these are just wishes floating around in the air, right? Anything else?
I think one of the things we did to meet the goal is we're in the process of hiring, 3 additional social workers?
Yep, major step, right? Boosting the professional staff who have deep expertise, right? Specialists. Anything
I think-
else? Yeah, sorry.
I think our district just intuitively did a good job of reaching out to kids that were at risk or kids that were having trouble at home. But I think that now it's operationalized and it's part of the culture and it's part of the administrative focus is that we're looking for kids that may have fallen through the cracks on a more systemic in a more systemic way.
And that's a beautiful thing. And thank you, Dr. Martinez. I think the phrase you used about becoming part of the culture, it wasn't just something we did for the month after we came remote, right? It wasn't just something we did here because we saw kids in such need. You know, children are having a great deal of trouble self-regulating, building relationships, controlling their moods, their actions. We know this, all children, all types of children, right? So not every child, but all types of children. So building that into the culture and understanding that that's who we are and what we do in Ridgefield Park.
And like the professional development that's provided to the staff, to the teaching community, the PD topics such as like the warm welcomes and the teachers implementing that within their classrooms. And also I can personally speak at one of the elementary schools, there are clubs like the Beyblade clubs that's actually run by the guidance.
That's great. So great examples, right? That 2 years ago, right? Clubs, warm welcomes, 3 more social workers, a lot of PD, and more outreach directly to homes and to individual children.
Also, if I can also add, I think that the discussion of curriculum, not just discussion, but action on curriculum is something that was sorely missing in this district. I think teachers were left to kind of find their own way and great teachers excelled and average teachers stayed average and other teachers stayed where they were. And I think that there's a bigger push in this district, not just to purchase a lot of curriculum, which we did last year, but to make sure it's being implemented and used.
So a curriculum is a tool, right? And when we don't have the tool, we make it up, right? It's just like a narrative about what's happening in the district. If you don't tell me what's happening, I make it up. I fill in all the voids. So having that curriculum as the core, right? We don't want teachers to all teach the same way, and we don't expect them to have the same approach or personalities, but we want to know that there's a guaranteed and viable curriculum in the 3rd grade, the English department, et cetera. So these are pieces for this particular goal that are well underway. They're established. What hasn't happened yet, but will in the next months, is think about those in terms of that's the list of actions. How will we know they're successful? How will we know that hiring 3 more social workers made it, right? How will we know how kids think about warm welcomes? How will we know that we're seeing curriculum development now in play in classrooms, right? They're the pieces you need to build out, right? So you've got this framework, you haven't built it out yet.
I would just like to make one other comment because, you know, the warm welcomes, the listening circles, the trauma, the kids falling through the cracks, all very positive, very important. Some of the people that fall through the cracks are the people that can be excelling and are average.
Oh, yeah.
Because they are not seen. And some of the, you know, just in terms of our teachers and who they call on in a classroom, that, you know, people feel seen because they're invited to participate as, you know, part of the instruction. And, you know, even some of our administrators and teachers that have students that, you know, this person loves me and they know me, and that's great. Do they know the other people that are walking in the school, or are they invisible?
And the research behind that is so deep and clear, like to be known, right? To be known as a human being, but then to be included in the learning, right? And the research is very voice in the classroom.
If I can add to what Ms. McNeil said, I think that's an area of growth. That's an area where we don't do as well a job as we should, is launching our average to above average students into either colleges or careers afterwards. I think we don't do a very good job of that as a district. I don't know if we've switched to what we need to do better, but I agree with Ms. McNeil.
Yeah.
I agree also. I think what we need to be is considering all students, those who want to go to college, those who don't.
Absolutely.
And provide training for those individuals.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm the mom of a 1-and-1, right? One who went off to college and really thrived and it was just made for that person. And one who said like, I dipped my toe in that water and hated it. And my life has taken a different path, and right for both of them, right? Right for both of them. But their high school didn't necessarily address both paths. So I completely understand that we have to give deep credibility and support to every child's pathway. So Barry, you have something to say? Sorry?
These are all going to be difficult for me because I'm always looking forward.
Yes.
As Dr. Martinez said, what are the
Why you
opportunities?
sit in that seat, right?
Okay. So as an example, from what Mrs. McNeil just brought up, a teacher calling on somebody, the discussion we had as an administrative team, and again, I'm extremely proud of the discussion and the time they got to spend on how we're looking at academic achievement, how we're making sure kids don't fall through the crack. But out of that came, we as a district need to get better at differentiated instruction, recognizing what each student needs. And I think a lot of districts deal with this. So it's not just a teacher calling on a student, but that students are recognized in small group work for each other and peer-to-peer recognition, and also by the teachers through a differentiated model. And so those are opportunities for growth for sure. And to your point, how do we know we're successful? I'd love to say through anecdotal observations. Administrators see that more teachers are implementing differentiated instruction, small group instruction, those kinds of things that we want to see happen more.
So when we ask the hard question about what's like when we're successful, yes, anecdotal, yes, surveys from kids and parents, but you also want to establish some criteria, right? Your social workers are going to have some set of criteria about who they see, how often, what the patterns and needs look like, how they respond. Right. When you think about every child known, that's going to show up in something like a panorama survey every year that you can look year to year to year to say, does every child have a trusted adult in this school system, right? Foundational, right? Does every child have a trusted adult? So there are pieces of data that you can hang on to for this as well.
The key is surveys, getting these surveys out to parent, because some of these things are already done and implemented in the classroom, such as small group instruction, guided reading. And as parents, we see the growth. So maybe sending a survey so you can hear from all community members and see where in what classrooms where and in what schools we don't see differentiated instruction and small group instruction.
So
because it is occurring in the district.
Yes.
It is.
Oh, absolutely. And we'll see the use of surveys in our next session together. I think if we can tell in the most, you're going to see 3 surveys this year. And we really are looking for you to just pay attention to like 3 surveys. They're so important to us. This is how we'll use them. You won't face that like survey fatigue. That are they going to ask me, am I going to fill out a survey again and again and again and again? Like, let's say this is what we're going to survey parents on over the next 12 months. This is why, and we're really going to beg you to do it, right? Because we want all these voices. I've seen a lot more people more districts rather, trying to like have the survey at back to school night on the phone, on a mobile version, right? So that I'm already attuned to school. I've already committed to being at back to school night virtually or in person. I'll do this survey for 4 minutes. right? So things like that, we can talk about how. And if we go back to goal 1, anything else that you say, this is how we know we're successful. There's the extreme built into this, and the extreme is the number of children who need intervention and support. And their numbers, right? And their numbers you should follow year to year, right?
I think the number of HIB incidents that you have.
Yes, right? Good HIB data is good data, right? To trend it year to year to year, not just to look at it in a flashpoint of 1 quarter or 1 year.
And involvement. I think how many children are involved in a club or a sport or
Matters, right? It matters academically. The higher the level of participation in co-curricular, the higher the academic achievement.
I know that at the high school, I can't remember her, I'm sorry. The principal of the high school presented about all the clubs, Ms. Cavens, I'm sorry, I couldn't think of her name. About all the clubs and all the involvement of the students in the clubs. Does the learning management system support keeping track of which students are in which clubs, so that then you could quickly run a report that says, here are 10 students that aren't in a club. How do we get them involved in something?
There are districts, I'm not recommending anything for you, your culture, right? And your climate, but there are districts that say every freshman, it is the expectation that you participate in one co-curricular. Now, remember, co-curricular is a club, music, drama, student governance, not just athletics, right? One, every freshman, just to get them into the culture of the school and to see if there's a passion and connect with other kids.
And not to detract from this other discussion, but to be transparent on the back end, we use a software called Gaggle. And it alerts administrators when students are participating in something that's self-harmful.
Yes.
And we have intervened very successfully to make sure that things don't get out of hand with students. So it's not as transparent, but
It's a good tool.
there are tools in the background we are also using for this
It's an
purpose.
important tool, right? So we're going to flesh these out a little bit, but what I'm saying to you is you've got a great structure, right? And things are in motion. You want to tend that garden a little better, to say, what does it look like when it's successful? How will we know, and what measures are we taking? Very little will come down to a test score. So, test scores are test scores. They're good information for us, but they're one piece of data, right? They're one piece of data. So we want to pay attention to them. We want to track them, but it's one facet of our world in schools. The second statement that you have is the work around, well, I might have lost that, huh? Okay. It's okay. We're fine, though. Is around early childhood. And, the great news here for Ridgefield Park is not only the promising research of early childhood learning, but also you're on track now with federal funding, state funding, what's happening with early childhood education and facilities. And the legwork that you've done in the last 12 to 18 months has put you in a position to heartily move forward soon with grant money, right? So that's a major piece. How will you know if that's successful? Like, yes, open the doors, but that's, again, the very beginning, right? You're going to want to track those children. We had them in full day kindergarten. We had them in full day pre-K. What happened to them in kindergarten? What happened to them in first grade, right? What kind of supports did they need? Did they stay with us? Were they classified, right? You're going to want to literally see not just those kids as a cohort by one, right? And those numbers are small enough that you can do that.
Thank you for touching on this subject, Ms. Wilson, because I think one of our recommendations when we were doing the evaluations was gauging it and putting measurables on some of these goals. And I
Yes.
think that's a great suggestion.
Yeah, kindergarten screening, like, if this year in kindergarten screening, X number of kids couldn't do this, and then they were with us for 2 years of preschool, what does kindergarten screening look like in 2 years? Right? You've got some measures here, right? In addition to the anecdotal, you've got measures. We know that it impacts brain development, just like a world language or music impacts brain development. We know that high quality early childhood learning impacts social relationships, right? Everything from eye contact to friendships to knowing myself, right? All of these pieces are part of early childhood learning and high quality learning. So the more that you can expand, the more children you could reach with this high quality program, because you've got control of it, right? And you get to design the PD and the curriculum, the better off you'll be as those kids go systemically, grade 5, grade 8, grade 12, right? Your last goal, which is big, and already you've mentioned a couple times this morning, the importance of this not being seen as just a high school goal, right? When you start to think about this in 9th grade, you are too late. Sorry. It's critical to think about and to know what we're doing in 9th, 10th, 11th grade, but you're late to the game if you're not talking about college and career readiness way down 4th grade, right? 4th grade. So up to 3rd grade, it's foundational. Do we have our foundational literacy skills in place? And then it is, what do you need to be ready for the world? I don't mean choosing a career. Most people 30 years old don't do that today. I mean, thinking about preparation to be able to choose a path, have a passion, be prepared. And that means you're a good thinker, right? That you ask good questions, that you've got some good mathematical and literacy skills in your toolkit. And you can think about, I would like to study this. I would like to go there. I would like to learn that. I would like to serve in the military. What is it that you want to do? And are you prepared to do it?
And it's even before, I'm looking at one of the standards, it's like by the end of grade 2, like the finance and literacy is saving money is a habit that can be developed. And that's something that can be taught in math. So it's not even, it's goes before 4th grade.
It does.
2nd
right?
grade, by the end of 2nd grade, by the end
Yep.
of.
It definitely does. I mean, we teach children about some of those skills even in kindergarten, but we want to know by 3rd grade that they're ready to be independent readers, right? That's our threshold. And we know all the bad research about kids who struggle beyond that with reading and then with math, and the likelihood that they're going to find something that they really can be successful, right? It happens, but chances go down, right? If you're struggling as a reader, a learner, a questioner. Okay. So what does success look like? What have you done so far, and what does success look like? Mr. Gomes?
I was just going to say, with respects to this goal, as an older person, I think one of the challenges is understanding the younger generations and that what they view as success and career and life
Yes,
beyond
it's very
education
different.
is different from our vision
It
of,
is.
going to school, having a career. These young folks, they're not willing to work as many hours. They're looking to retire as soon as possible. And so their way of thinking is different. My, middle schooler is hooked on Shark Tank. He wants to start a business.
Entrepreneur. He's going to be an entrepreneur. Yeah.
But that's their way of thinking. And I think we as the educators and the older people, we have to adjust our thinking and understand that the younger generation is thinking differently with respect to careers.
Right. Well, even the middle career generation is thinking differently since they've gotten to work at home a bit. Right. So I think that we are looking at a couple of things. One is you're not choosing a career for your life. The other is the nimbleness of the world is changing quickly, and you might be in 3 or 4 different fields or more. Right. The critical piece is not can they choose a career? The critical piece is, can they think, ask great questions, mean, we want kids who can ask great questions and then problem solve, right? No matter what career they choose, no matter what work they choose.
It's a very important point, the skills that are necessary to be successful, because a career, we might 5, 6, 7 years from now, there might be a career that we might not even have thought about at this present
Absolutely.
time. So we need to
Absolutely.
teach them like
Yeah.
the skills to be successful in anything they want to do in the future.
And those skills we know. I mean, read any McKinsey, Deloitte report on what is needed in the workplace in the next 10 years. It's inquiry-driven, problem-solving, collaborative, right? Great communicators. It's not, did they have this course, right? It's how their brains work strongly, right? If they choose to go into a field that requires these certifications and these courses, absolutely. But in our experience of them being K-12, we want them to be really strong thinkers, right? With a breadth of experiences. Okay. So you have to start to ask yourselves, what does success look like then? How will we measure our goal of expanding multiple pathways? Well, expanding them, yeah, we're going to build programs. Our course of study might change. We might add classes. We might eliminate classes. We might have kids out on internships. Those types of pathways are measurable, right? What kids do with them and how well prepared they think they are 1 year out, we can find out, right? 1 year out. We also have to be tracking the information of the kids who do go off to college. 3 semesters in, are they returning, right? That semester, that information is National Clearinghouse information for every high school graduate in our country. And we need to know, like we sent them off. They all said they were going to these programs and colleges and county colleges and universities. Did they stay, right? Because most of us are very surprised at the very high attrition rate of kids who start and can't get past the 3rd semester, right? The research is if they get past the 3rd semester, they're likely to graduate, right? So we want to know that about our
I
kids.
think though we need to really be careful with that as a statistic, because I mean, your 1-on-1 example.
Yes. Oh, yeah.
It's not for everyone. And we
It's
kind of have to
not.
get out of the mindset that only children who go to college are successful.
Oh, yeah. And please don't take my interpretation of that, because I just want school boards to know if they think 80% of our kids are going off to college, they should not assume 80% are finishing, right? And some of them are really surprised to find out that it's not 75, but it's 55 or 45.
But I think it's.
And that's fine, but they need to know.
I think it's probably more, we should reflect on that a little bit more, because if only 60% of them are finishing, then either A, they weren't prepared for it, or B, that wasn't the proper path for them.
Could be either of those things, right? In addition to financial or life circumstances, right? But we want to know. We can't just say like, oh, we assume they all chose a path as 18-year-olds and went on their merry way and were successful in what they chose, right? They might have to choose again. And when they choose again, we want them to be great reflectors, collaborators, communicators, and we want them to be able to ask themselves hard questions, right? That they can answer.
My graduate school follows us every 2 years. They send us a survey with about 10 questions about where we're working, how we're doing, whether we like it or not, whether we think the school prepared us for a career. I think it would be a great project for the counseling department, along with a couple of students every year, to track down former graduates and find out how they're doing and whether they like what the school offered them and what their reflections are on their experience here, as well as what they're doing in the future.
It's a great body of work. Even if you can just get samplings of kids and small focus groups or do it virtually. We have the means now that we didn't have before. You know, kids used to go off and we would never get their addresses again, right? But now we have much in terms of the body of tools that we can use to track kids down. So I'm going to ask for one more comment, and then I'm going to give you a little preview of kind of the work that we'll do. The next session is like roll up sleeves. What is it that should happen and how will we measure it, right? As you look at your 3 goals. But keep in mind, you've taken a good dive into these 3 bodies of work, but you're not swimming yet, right? You're just like, you're in the water and you're in the right water, but got to swim a little to win the race and see what success looks like. One more comment?
I just wanted to comment that when we take a look at the college and career options for students, because I'm dealing a lot with major employers in my job. And one of the things that they're working on, because they're starting to see the future, is creating a pipeline of employees. I just had a meeting with the Department of Defense, and they're now trying to partner with CTE schools because, hey, we need workers that are not necessarily college bound,
Right.
And so there's so many great options out there that I think sometimes even the people in the schools don't really realize, because these employers are coming out of the woodworks to us now, like Toyota and all the major car dealerships, they're coming to us and saying, we want to be your partner. I think that's something we need to look at as education institutions and create these partnerships.
Yeah. And it's a great example of the pendulum swung too far, right? The pendulum a decade ago really swung to every kid college ready. And a lot of people misinterpreted that as college bound, right? To be ready means to be a great thinker, critical thinker, problem solver, et cetera, right? Not everybody. So now our CTE programs are more important than ever. Yeah. So approach, systemic, holding each other accountable for that reflective cycle. And when you do begin the work, always have a mental model of what does success look like. So we know at least a general roadmap of where we're headed. Okay. All the things that high functioning boards do, that you'll get better and better at. But we're going to flesh that out a little bit in our next session and be more detailed.
And also, let's take into consideration what is the meaning of success.
Oh, yes.
For different students. Because
absolutely.
There could be that student who happiness is success.
Foundational.
Money, success.
Right.
Like, it depends on it.
Yeah.
It
So
varies.
you're not going to be able to answer what success looks like for every individual. You have to answer what does success look like for the board and the district, so that every kid can find his path for success. Yeah. Okay, good people who give so much, and it's been a long, warm day, and you have a lot to think about. So I thank you again for your service, but we'll be back together to do the next detail layer.
And thank you for coming.
Okay,
Thank you for your time.
Of course.
Thank you.
Always so good to be with you.
Thank you, ma'am.
Oh, those little cards. Oh, just a happy little thing on your way home. They'll pop open with a message that I think was meant just for you. There you go.
Thank you.
Thank
So
you.
welcome. So welcome.
Also want to thank the members of the public who hung in there, in person and online.
Yes. Yes. So I'm going to leave a little book. Books are my thing, and I usually bring gifts of books for people. And the one I'm going to give to Barry to share with people is The Thin Book of Trust. It's the 2nd edition, new this year, literally is a thin little manuscript. It's one of the foundational pieces that's been written about trust, how it's built, how it's nurtured, and how it's lost. And, if you have a board, as a board, don't operate with trust and don't win the trust of the public, you're never going to be high functioning, right? So to keep the trust you have and to build it, well, you might want to take a look at this, but I'll leave it with Barry. Thanks very much.
George, are we adjourned?
We'll take a motion to adjourn for sure.
I second.
Guess so. I guess so.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, everybody.